Good evening. Welcome to this plenary session organized by the Education Committee of the Queen's College Old Girls Association to commemorate the International Day of Education. The International Day of Education is celebrated every 24th January in recognition of the role of education for peace and development. My name is Nkem Asoka. I'm your moderator for this session. The Education Committee has organized this session to showcase the impact of learning on education and how far we can recover and revitalize the education for the COVID-19 generation. Our panelists today are subject matter experts across various spheres of education, and we're really honored to have them with us this evening. Earlier today, we had interviews with stakeholders in Queen's College, the principal of Queen's College, the vice principal of Queen's College, and the outgoing head girl of the 2020 set.
We all know what happened last year. We had COVID-19, and there was a general lockdown, which also affected our students. However, after some time, we began to look at that we don't want our students to just be at home without learning anything. And we decided to see how we can still make an impact on their lives even while they are at home. So I designed Telegram teaching for our students. We opened Telegram platform for every class, and we asked the PTA to help us get the names of the students and their phone numbers. We put each of the students on the Telegram class. We also put our teachers there, the classes that they teach. So we were teaching on Telegram. For over a month, we had teaching on Telegram. We had a timetable from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. with a break in between, from Monday to Saturday. When teachers will come online, they will teach the students. Students will interact with the teachers. They will put notes on the Telegram, put videos, pictures, diagrams. They downloaded resources on the internet that were also able to post on Telegram. And it was a very interactive session. Actually, the students said they enjoyed it, but they were able to ask the teachers questions online, and the teachers responded. By the end of that exercise, we had online tests for all the subjects that were taught. The test, we used a Google form for the test. There was a timetable, and the students keyed in, and they were able to do the test, and they submitted online. We actually had the badge of the test. Some students, other their parents were not at home, they were using their parents' phones, but they didn't have network. So we were able to do tests for them. And that helped us to cover a lot of our syllabus.
So COVID-19, which is a pandemic, had a devastating effect on school system, especially the teachers who are instructors. One is that teachers have a direct contact with the children, and for one to deliver lessons, there had always been need for the person to be close to the teachers, and this pandemic had made it not to be anymore. And also the teacher is afraid of what happens to her, so you find out that there are some negative things. You think about what happens to you, so it makes you not to put in your best like that. When you find something that is supposed to be between you and the students, but you just do it casually and get away from there.
COVID-19 struck Nigeria when my set was about to sit for the final examinations, which are West African Senior School Certificate Examinations and National Examination Council Senior School Certificate Examinations. I would say that COVID-19 has had both positive and negative impact on students' learning, as well as my learning and overall educational experience in Queen's College.
Well, I'll start by saying that everything has its good sides and bad sides, and COVID-19 is not an exception. First and foremost, we found it hard to cope with the new changes that had to be made in the school system. The school calendar had to be changed numerous of times to adjust and make up for the time lost during the lockdown.
Before we go into the plenary proper, I'd like to invite Professor Christine Ofulue, the chairperson of the Education Committee, to give us some introductory remarks, as well as introduce the panelists. Professor Ofulue is a professor of linguistics at the National Open University of Nigeria. A graduate of University of Ilorin, she holds a PhD from Indiana University, Bloomington, Indiana. She's an OG Queens College, class of 80, and the current chair of the Education Committee. Professor Ofulue, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nkem. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to this plenary session on education, celebrating the International Day of Education. On December 3, 2018, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution declaring January 24 as the International Day of Education in celebration of the role of education for peace and development. The adoption of the resolution International Day of Education, co-authored by Nigeria and 58 other member states, demonstrates the unwavering political will to support transformative actions for inclusive, equitable, and quality education for all. The Education Committee of the QCOGA is therefore delighted to join the rest of the world in celebrating the 2021 edition of the International Day of Education. As you've earlier heard, this year's theme is Recover and Revitalize Education for the COVID-19 Generation. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the fault lines of education systems around the world, and Nigeria is not an exception. UNESCO reports that over 1.5 billion students from pre-tertiary to tertiary education were affected as the pandemic interrupted learning for 9 out of 10 students globally. There have been no quick solutions either, as almost half of the students face barriers to online learning, which was what most schools systems pivoted to. While COVID-19 is being seen by some as widening the divide of inequalities and inclusion, others see it as the great equalizer. And of course, there's consensus around the fact that COVID-19 has been a great disruptive force. In sub-Saharan Africa, 89% of learners do not have access to a household computer. 82% do not have access to household internet, and 11% are not covered by mobile networks. Yet the skills and competencies required of the 21st century workforce are hinged on these, especially as technology advances and more jobs are becoming automated. Our discussion seeks to shed light on and to raise awareness about the impact of the pandemic on students, on parents, and teachers. How are schools coping? And most importantly, what is the way forward to revitalize and build resilient education systems, especially in contexts such as ours? These and other issues will be discussed by a distinguished panel, each of whom have a wealth of experience in their chosen vocations within the education space. They will be sharing their perspectives with us. It is now my pleasure to introduce our panelists, and I will begin with Dr. Amara Anyogu, who is a lecturer in microbiology at the University of Westminster, London, UK. She's a fellow of the Higher Education Academy with over 15 years of experience in the design and delivery of impactful learning in higher education. She is an OGQC class of 1998. You're welcome, Dr. Amara. The next is Sarah Yewande Ogunde, founder and program director of the Literacy Foundation, an NGO providing educational resources to disadvantaged communities. She's also a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria and fellow of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. Primary vocation had been as a banker from 1991 to 1997. and she's also an associate faculty at Covenant University and at Lagos State University. She is an OGQC class of 1969. You're welcome, ma'am. Next is Dr. Alo Ohio Omokomian, who is the Director of Education at Austria Schools and founder of Brains and Butter, an educational consultancy firm that places Nigerian children in British boarding schools that are a right fit for them. She has a PhD in development studies from the University of Sussex, UK, and has over 16 years of experience in the education sector. She is an OGQC class of 1999. You're welcome, Dr. Alo. Last but not the least is Mrs. Modupe Adeyinka Oni. She is the founder of Standard Bearer School Lekki, a nursery and primary school she founded 24 years ago. She is a graduate of the University of Ife and holds a postgraduate certificate from Nottingham University in the UK. She is an OGQC girl class of 1977. A very warm welcome to you ladies, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I will now hand over to our moderator, Kim, to moderate the session. Thank you. And I wish us all pleasant listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Ofulue. We'll jump right into the session, and I'll start with you, Dr. Anyogo. What was the impact of COVID on teaching?
Thank you very much, Senior and Cam, and thank you to the Education Committee for putting this wonderful event together. So Professor Christine has already told us about how COVID-19 has become the great disruptor. And I think like any other disruptive sort of event, there are challenges that are immediately obvious, but I think hidden within that, from a teaching perspective, are also opportunities for education that I would like us to consider and think on as we go forward. I guess an apparent challenge is that lack of face-to-face contact with our students. We know that teaching is not just about transmitting information, but we pick up on so many visual cues from our students when we're teaching them, some of which is lost when we use online media. Also, learning is primarily a social activity. Students learn from each other. There's a lot of peer work. And that essence in the teaching in the classroom is often lost in online teaching. And of course, as a STEM tutor, I teach STEM subjects, which are very practical based, not being able to get the students into physical labs, to get them to develop those tactile skills that they need in the laboratory has been a challenge. And for many people in many parts of the world, access to the appropriate technology to be able to actually teach their students remains a big obstacle in online learning. Of course, there's the pedagogy of actually teaching students online, because we know that it isn't just you cannot just replicate what you do in face-to-face online and expect it to be impactful teaching. So online teaching and learning has its own pedagogy about how the best, more effective ways of engaging our students are. And of course, the workload and the fact that instead of working from home, I think we're more of living at work at the moment, and some of the challenges that brings. But there are so many opportunities that this has brought forth. COVID has disrupted education in a way that I think is going to be permanent for us going forward. There isn't truly a post-COVID world. COVID is here. We're just going to learn how to live with it. And it's made me ask some questions. For example, should we be doing things differently, or should we be doing different things? And a lot of the tools that we have at present to engage with our students in online learning, whether we're doing that in synchronous live sessions with them, like using different sort of tools, collaborative tools, polls to capture their attention, or other things that we can do in asynchronous learning, using things like Google Classroom or other kind of software that are available to keep students engaged with their work. And I think a lot of those things will continue whenever we're able to meet our students in classes. The way we engage students using active learning techniques, a lot of these are digital tools, but again, it comes back to being able to access them. So I think the future is bright where education is concerned. I know that there's a lot of turbulence at the moment, but I'm hoping that, like a phoenix rising, that, you know, we will take the, you know, we will glean the advantages that we have at the present and use that for impactful education going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anyogo. Quite succinct and broad description of the impact of COVID. So lots of contact with the students brings about lots of opportunities to, you know, to latch onto cues during the teaching process, and then also to explore the opportunities of thinking outside the box to, you know, to re-engineer your pedagogy so that you can keep the students engaged. Thank you very much. I'll come to you, Mrs. Sarah Ogunde. What has been the impact of COVID on parents?
Thank you, Nkem, Prof, and other panel members. Wow, the parents' usual role had been to get the kids off to school. And thank God when they're in the boarding house, your stress is all with the school. With the COVID, things have just turned around. The kids at home is a main problem. They're being at home beyond the time you expect. And that has created a lot of pressure on parents, you know, guardians, grandparents, especially those who don't even have a clue what computers do. You know, whatever you learn, the kids, we all know they're very quick, they're very fast, you know, they learn most of the stuff in school. And you find mainly the problem with the parents now is working less hours, having less hours for other routine things that they had done, and now trying to manage the kids in the house, trying to, where there's virtual classes, you know, trying to get them to do their homework online. And just like the first speaker said, where you don't have internet facilities. In some countries, you have internet facilities round the clock. But where you're now going to use you know, this internet sticks and all that, and you're managing time, you're managing data and all that, it becomes a problem, you know, for the parents. So we're looking at job losses, the impact of COVID on parents, fear of job insecurity, reduced income, financial stress, and we know that this leads to other problems in the family. Parents having to stay home with the kids where normally they will go out, or, you know, parents now having to stay home with the entire family. That also has created problems, you know, kids misbehaving, or even depression. You know, we don't look at that area of life where someone is locked in the bedroom thinking, what do I do with these kids? Or what do I do with this man? Or what do I do with this family? Because of all these issues. And, you know, once you send the kids off to school, very few parents really look at the work. They look at the report card. So it's now come to the point that it's like you're now doing the teacher's work. You now have to look at homework. They're giving them assignments. And, you know, some of this also, I think, stems from maybe some of the teachers' inability to teach virtually. So the easiest thing to do is just to give a list of homework to be done at home to keep the kids abreast. And then you need to monitor this so that they get good grades. So, you know, those are really the major things that I feel the parents are feeling. We've now gotten to an age that the parents now need to know how to use the computer. Some don't even know how to turn it on. So now learning how to turn it on, learning how to use the software with the children. I've seen, you know, where the kid is using the laptop and something goes wrong with it, and they throw their hands up, and the parents can't help because they don't have a clue to how it works anyway. So those are some of the things that we need to look at, where we can now put the school and the parents together, using this opportunity now that maybe each child should, and it's not every child anyway that has a laptop or can use a laptop. if we can get all the kids to have the hardware where the parents also learn how to use it, and they can also communicate with the schools. So there's ease in transmission of information and learning for the kids anyway, and I believe the parents also will learn. That's my share to the impact on parents.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ogunde. Quite expansive. Just to pick up quickly something that you mentioned about parents, the gap in knowledge by the parents, not knowing how the children are taught. And what just flashed in my mind was for younger children that have to do e-learning, that means the parents have to sit with them throughout. Yes. Older children is fine. I mean, you can go about your duties. So a lot of learning and just reshaping the way things are done for the parents. Really. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll come to you, Dr. Alo Ohio Omonkomio. And my question is, what has been the impact of COVID on students?
Thank you, Senior and Kim. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's such a pleasure to be here. COVID has redefined childhood and family experience, overall family experience in many, many ways. And I think this is a good opportunity to appeal to parents and carers to please be more forgiving of children, and also to children. I'm appealing to children to also be more understanding of their parents and with their parents, because of the stress that both sides of the table are having to experience as a result of this, change in the way we know in the way we do life, life where things have changed. And it's worth mentioning that rather than see COVID as a good thing or a bad thing, it's for us to see it as a redefinition of childhood, a redefinition of learning, a redefinition of education. Now, for the child in question, the impact of COVID is really a mixed bag of sorts. And it's a mixed bag, and it's important that we recognize this variety of experience being had by different children. And it's important we recognize that and not lose it in the quest for generalization. Now, why do I say it has been a mixed bag? It varies depending on the region the child is in, the age of the child, and how independent that child is. The school the child attends, are we talking about private school or a public school or a state school? Depends on the financial circumstances of the family. It depends on the family structure. So it's really a varied experience that varies based on these different factors. I'll just pick on one, and I'm going to look at I want to discuss the impact on children as a result of the differences in financial circumstances of families. I've chosen this aspect because we see a convergence here of the twin impact of the pandemic in terms of the economic impact, and the health impacts of the pandemic. We have an issue of device and data, the cost of device and data, where for some of you who are watching this, it's not really a problem. I mean, data is unlimited. For others, this is far from the reality. I mean, even having a device in itself, having a dedicated device per child, it's a different matter entirely. So there are these issues for children, and access to a virtual learning environment really requires an infrastructural setup all by itself. It also requires a facilitation of learning for the child. So for younger children, the parent needs to be more present, as it were, and that in itself is demanding. So where you have a case where the parent is unable to give as much attention to a younger child who is not necessarily independent, then the cognitive side of the academic learning that the child is experiencing may not be quite the same. It also depends on how many live classes can the school even offered to the child. So we have different things happening here, but something that is also changing that we may not realize that is happening to children is the fact that there is a shift away from academic performance. There's a shift away from the dominant attention that we paid to your maths and your English and those traditional, subjects. They are still important, but we are seeing a situation where, because children are having to literally also facilitate their own learning more than they would have done in the past, they're developing their own skills, their creative writing skills, problem solving skills, learning life skills, being a bit more domesticated than would have been the case in the past. So that is happening, and it's the beauty of that is in a way, like, nature is almost preparing itself for the future of work, the future of the kind of jobs that would be relevant in this era that we are in right now. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ohio Omonkomio. Listening to you, what came to my mind was that COVID, at least as far as Nigeria is concerned, COVID threw up 3 categories of schools. There are the private schools who, they will have the resources, the parents will be able to provide so they can get by. There are the government-funded schools who, hopefully with an active Old Students Association, they will get by. Then there are the public schools, those who don't have access, like the other 2 categories. So a lot still needs to be done, obviously, and you've highlighted that very well. I'll come to you now, Mrs. Adenika Oni. What is the way forward? How can we recover and revitalize education for our COVID-19 generation?
Thank you very much, Nkem. That's a good question. The way forward. Well, listening to Amara spoke about the change that has to take place for the teachers. And that's a good thing for everyone, because we have come to a stage where we have to look at what was being done and what we need to do. We have to go with the flow, understanding that the future of work calls for us to prepare children with very different skill sets from what we've been doing today. So whether we're private or whether we're a government establishment, this problem is at the fore for everyone. Teachers have to upskill and learn how to teach and engage children in this new environment. And it is good because no longer do teachers speak to our children. They have to learn to institute dialogue, whereby the children's voice is just as strong, if not stronger. And that is key, because that is how children begin to learn to express themselves, the communication skills that we all talk about, and beyond that, thinking outside the box. For the parent has to accept that this change is here. Even if, which we know it's not going to happen, we have a chance of going back to physical school the way it was. Learning has changed. And whether we're in physical school or whether we're online, digital tools will be used for the teaching and learning of children going forward. And they have to make that provision. The beautiful thing is that the children are digital by nature. And so because of that, they learn. And so parents too will learn along with their children. And a time come when these children will no longer need their parents, but they will have the whole internet at their disposal. They'll have the resources. They can become lifelong early learners from an early age and begin to take their learning in the direction that their gifts and talents move them, irrespective of what what teacher is teaching in class. And we do know that technology is the future. We don't have enough tech embedded in our curriculum here in Nigeria, but the internet allows children access to that. And so for us as government, as Nigeria, we have a big problem because socially, we have 3 types of schools: the private schools, the public schools, and then the government schools that don't have access to all the tools that they need. And we have so many children out of school. So what can we do there? The truth is that's where you and I come in. We have all gone to Queen's College. We've got a great government education, and we're grateful for that, but we haven't looked back. What it calls for now is for people in our generation and those even behind us and ahead of us to understand that the problem of fixing the education space in Nigeria is everybody's problem, and we have to work together to find the solutions. So we know what it is. Online learning allows us to provide access to education for a lot of children with minimal cost. In the next 2 to 3 years, if we set out to build all the schools that we need, we couldn't do it. But if we say we have good learning platforms and we have teachers delivering the instruction in ways that children can learn, we have a chance to get a lot more children into that place where they can begin to get an education, and we can bring the number of children out of school back into school, and those that are in school, we can move them along. I also see that in this whole online learning space, we can actually affect the mindsets. You know, there's so many things that children have been taught, particularly in Nigeria, that it has been embedded in them that is actually very negative. But through the civics and the ethics and letting them understand what true leadership means, we can begin to change the paradigm and get children to see themselves as future leaders. One thing we haven't done well in Nigeria is we haven't showcased real leaders for these children. We have a generation of children who believe that the leaders are the influencers, that they are the politicians, and that money is what makes you a leader. Going online affords us the opportunity to showcase who real leaders are in the world and tell stories of how these leaders came to get there, to achieve what they have. And so we can help them to see that being poor today does not cut you out of the equation when it comes to being a good person and a leader tomorrow. I think basically there's just so much work to do. And like they say, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a day. That day has come, and we are all starting the journey. And by the grace of God, we will do great things for our school and for our nation.
Thank you very much for that summation, Mrs. Adenika. Thank you, thank you. Beyond the infrastructure, there's a lot to do. We have to upgrade the skills. We have to get everybody relearning and unlearning what they had learned before in order to survive in the digital age. Thank you very much. And it's not just for the government, it's for all of us to pitch in. Thank you very much. I'll go back to the chairperson, Professor Ofulue, to wrap up this session.
Wow. Thank you so much, ladies, for a very, very most insightful discussion and contributions. We couldn't have said it any better. Definitely the challenges are enormous, but as we have heard, so also are the possibilities. I was on, just as an aside, I was on a webinar yesterday, and it was about mentoring women for leadership. And what Mrs. Adenika Oni's summation said is really the same thing that was being said there, that we need to come together and we need to work together collectively to be able to make the changes that we want to see. We need to be the change that we want to see. In the education space, COVID-19 has definitely been a game changer, but a game changer in the positive sense towards leveraging more on technology. What we've heard about doing things differently, and what we need to do differently cuts across the whole education terrain, from access to learning, delivery, retooling, upskilling of teachers, not only in technology, but also in how to design their lessons for online.
Yes.
Students learning how to learn and learn online. And also we've heard about, the new skills and competencies that students need for the 21st century workplace. So this is a clear-on call to action. As we celebrate the International Day of Education, I believe that together we can make a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you too. Well done, everyone.
Yeah, it was nice.